Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate, the League Two podcast. And we're joined by our regular guest, Ben Jones, the Tranmere Rovers supporter. Ben, great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. We've got a plethora of guests coming up later in the show. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Tranmere Rovers, first of all. How do you reflect on their start to the season?
I think the first few weeks of the season, we were playing decent football. The results didn't maybe reflect that against Barrow and MK Dons. But I think in the MK Dons game in particular, we played some really nice football. We were passing it round. We could mix it up with the long balls as well. I think we've still got the most successful long passes in the division, which suggests, they're not just kind of like hoofs up the pitch. They're kind of more targeted long balls, which was something Cheltenham were very good at a few years ago.
Yeah.
Sure. There was that good start. And we had a good cup game at Barnsley as well. We drew 2-2, probably deserved to win it. But then against Salford at home, it was sort of similar story for 45 minutes. We were the better side, deservedly went in 2-1 at half-time. And then kind of we hit a bit of a disaster going into half-time with both Leah Connor and Luke Norris going off injured.
Sure.
And I think Luke Norris was someone who was really important for us because it's something we've missed for the past couple of seasons, which is that kind of focal point up front, which allows our playmakers to get higher off the pitch because, they can play off him.
Sure.
You're not necessarily like hoofs aimed at his neck or anything. You're just passing it into feet and him being able to hold defenders off so that other people can get 10 yards higher off the pitch.
Well, do you know what? Let's talk about Luke Norris then, Ben, because you mentioned the Cheltenham sort of comparison, which I think is a really interesting one. Because when Michael Duff first came in at Cheltenham, one of his first moves, they actually had quite a bloated squad at the time, and it was difficult to get players in. But he did manage to sort of stretch the budget to bring in Luke Varney, who's a very experienced focal point, fit as a fiddle, even at 37, I think he was at the time, and really springy striker as well. And then actually he was great for a couple of years, and then in the title winning season, I think they had Sam Smith alongside Alfie May, who was quite offers a bit of physicality, I guess, as well. And I suppose that makes me wonder about Tranmere, because Kane Hemmings seems to be a little bit out of favour. There's reports that he's maybe not taken the opportunity to move to a National League club. And I just wonder, are Tranmere in a bit of a sticky situation at the moment without Luke Norris and with Kane Hemmings seemingly out of form, because Christian Dennis is obviously more of a poacher?
Exactly, yeah. I think it kind of depends how long the Norris injury is. I believe he was going for a second scan today. So we don't yet, as fans, know what kind of the results of that was.
Sure.
So if it's only a couple of weeks, then you can live with it. If it's something that's 3 or 4 months, then that may cause us a bit more of a headache. I think in terms of Hemmings, it's been a bit of a bizarre one because there's a few players like him we've not been able to get off the books to rebalance the squad. I think it's safe to say that last season Hemmings didn't work for us at all. I don't think he was enjoying his football,
which is weird because he actually formed a good partnership with Elliot Nevitt in the
in the 6 months before,
season. And then now you're looking at Nevitt now at Crewe. You offloaded him back in January, and Hemmings is someone you're trying to offload. I mean, that partnership looked like quite promising. And
it did. Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons. At the start of last season, there was a little optimism. We thought that kind of partnership was going to continue to develop, and in fact, it just went the complete opposite way, and Nevitt ended up completely regressing, and Hemmings' figures for the season were well below average even. I think we're hoping that, where we are with the squad, we've actually got 24 senior pros on the books, which is a really big squad for League Two.
Sure, yeah.
The problem we have with it is some of them aren't quite good enough because they were given contracts that were too long and it's not worked out with them. Hemmings being one of those. Brad Walker probably being another. It's not worked with him since he came from Port Vale. And then people like Paul Lewis as well. He was given a 2-year contract when I think really that should have been a 1-year contract for the kind of role.
Do you know what though, Ben? I think the 1-year contract is, a really difficult one because Carlisle had a period, before Paul Simpson returned, where
Yeah,
under was it Dean Holdsworth or I think it was David Holdsworth, the sort of director of football. They offered 1 year contracts, and it kind of had an effect on players where it's like, are you really giving me the security?
yeah,
Now, I think you've probably got to ask more questions over the recruitment itself on
yeah,
the players you've chosen, more than necessarily the decision to give 2 year contracts, because I think
yeah,
2 year deals are the ones that actually make players feel wanted, as opposed to feeling like they're on
yeah.
the jury, if you like.
I think something we were speaking about the other day as well was kind of the players we've given the longer contracts to. Some of them have made sense, but then, for example, we gave Ethan Bristow effectively a 3 year contract because it was a 2 year contract with an option for an extra year on the club side. So that was 3 years essentially, which is why we managed to command a good fee for him in the summer. Likewise, we gave the same contract to Josh Hawkes, who we've still got, and
Sure.
Leo Connor. Now, Josh Hawkes was probably our best player last season. In terms of his output, he was the top goal scorer. Probably the only player, given Kieran Morris missed half a season, that was a constant goal threat. It's been slightly bizarre that he's not quite found his way into the team much this season, but even so, you would say having him for this year and potentially another year is a good thing, either from a squad building point of view towards what happens next
Well,
year, or
except
even.
except Ben, the system that Ian Dawes seems to have
Yeah,
favoured seems to be very narrow.
yeah,
Excuse me,
yeah,
with lots of like just Regan Hendry in the middle, and then you've got Connor Jennings behind two strikers, and then you've kind of got a diamond.
yeah.
If I
So
remember, so it's
I think it's kind of evolving. It's hard to work out which formation he prefers because we've played both a 4-4-2 diamond and also a 4-3-3.
right.
Now, I actually think the 4-3-3 would get the best out of Josh Hawkes because I think I remember saying to you last season that I would prefer to see him as an inside forward rather than as a winger, because I think his strength is when he's kind of, in those shooting positions.
He's not super quick though. He's more of a sort of tricky.
Yeah, he's got quick feet. He can shift the ball side to side and work a shot from, tight positions. So,
But Ben, an inside forward, I tend to associate with being someone that's just going to run directly at
yeah,
goal.
possibly.
Whereas actually, if you look at the goals Josh Hawkes has scored, I think he scored one at Barrow, whether it was maybe the year before last season, where
Yeah,
it was more from outside the box rather than, whereas an
yeah.
inside forward you
They
think
do
of.
tend to be from probably 15 to 25 yards would be, I'd say, where he scores all his goals.
Mm,
I could be wrong. There might be one or two exceptions to that, but generally 15 to 25 yards.
yeah.
So, but the way I would kind of look at it in the 4-3-3 is, if we did have Luke Norris fit, is you kind of got Luke Norris holding the ball up to then bring Josh Hawkes into the positions where he can get those shots off. And on the other side, I think if we were working with a fully fit squad, you would have Harvey Saunders on probably the right flank,
Mm.
who is then your pacey option.
Do you know, I like that idea because you can have I think Harvey Saunders is the sort of inside forward pushing
Yeah,
into maybe a second striker position,
yeah,
not peeling off, and then maybe Hawks cutting inside and
yeah.
getting into the hole a little bit. I do want to bring in Ben Nicholls, who's a Swindon Town
Okay.
fan, in a moment, but I've got one more question on Tranmere for you, Ben, which is um, you've brought in a right back, I think, in Dan Pike. And I'm just wondering whether Leo Connor can actually play in midfield a little bit more because he's someone who's got the legs. Do you think, given the nature of your system and how maybe open that can leave you at times, that Leo Connor might actually have a part to play at the base of midfield?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, I think just quickly say on Dan Pike, he actually played left back against Leicester,
Sorry, forgive me.
so he can play either side. He actually
Right.
did really well there. To be fair to him, up against Mark Albrighton.
Oh,
But yeah, I think Lee might be kind of what we're missing in the middle at the minute because you've got Regan Hendry and Kieran Morris, who are
mm.
both forward-thinking players. They're both technically very good on the ball, but are they really going to do the defensive work? Are they going to be positionally right? So I think if you had Leo kind of sat in between them somewhere where he's acting as like the ball winning midfielder who just kind of sits, then I think that could probably give us the balance we've missed in certainly the last two games against Salford and Notts County.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's the case, and Ian Dawes can find the right formula. Bringing in now Ben Nicholls, who's a Swindon Town fan, and Town have certainly found the right formula in their last game, a 6-0 victory over Crawley Town and former manager Scott Lindsay, and 4 goals for Jake Young, with his partner in crime, Dan Kemp, doing plenty of damage as well. You must be a very happy Swindon fan right now, Ben.
Yeah, no, unexpected. If you asked me a month ago, well, you know how I was about a month ago. I was concerned going into the season itself. We weren't totally sure what type of football that we'll be seeing from Mike Flynn with his reputation at previous clubs. But to say we are pleasantly surprised is an understatement. I've likened this football to Bazball football. It's ridiculously attacking.
Sorry, say that again.
Bazball football. If you're into your cricket, you'd understand what I mean. England as a cricket team play an uber attacking format of cricket that's never really been seen before. We kind of do the same sort of thing. I've never seen overlapping centre backs really at all. We play with a really high wing back as well.
When Nathan Thompson played for you, I thought you made some driving runs, but maybe not overlapping. Just that.
We've got we play a back three and Godwin Malif on one side, very comfortable on the ball. Player from Forest Green Romans, very very comfortable player and has played at a higher level, very good. And then Fraser Blake Tracy, who's normally a left back on the other side of the back three, and they're quite happy to get the ball down and take players on and cut to the byline and cut it back. We've got super attacking wing backs. Hutton's, had the top assists in Europe, something ridiculous. Last season, they're up 13 assists. And we've got Tariq Uwake, which, forgive me if I've murdered his surname, but he's usually a midfielder stroke winger from Crewe, and he's playing as the other wing back, and they play really high up. My colleague at Falls Rush In, Stephen Fife, says it's not a 3-5-2, it's a 3-3-4 formation, where it's entertaining. Every single game this season has been like a basketball game, where it's been toing and throwing. Even Saturday when it was 6-0, Crawley should have had 3 goals in the first 20-25 minutes, but then we should have had 3 or 4 ourselves. Once we established superiority and we got ahead of them, it was just all over them, and there was no let up, it was good to see. I think that's not the first time we're going to do that to teams, but I also fear at some point down the line we're going to find ourselves 3-0 down in the first 30 minutes ourselves with that sort of uber attacking football. But it's brilliant to watch. Absolutely, I've never seen this before, and I never thought Mike Flynn would be the sort of guy, because I always thought he's a cautious manager.
Well, yeah,
that and a reputation for that, and it's not at all. He's someone that says, I want to play attacking football. I want to play entertaining football. I want to have fans sat on the edge of their seats watching it. I want to give this a real good go, and I think he's lived every word of it. He's had the bad experience at Warsaw, and he's just thought, I'll take this on differently, and it's refreshing. It's really great to watch, but it's I've never seen it before. At some point, I don't know how sustainable it is. At some point, we've just got to play a bit more sanity, but at the moment, it's ridiculous, and there's players that are thriving from it. Kemp thrives. Young's thriving. Charlie Austin's now playing the best that I've seen him before, and he's now looking as fit and as sharp as I've seen him. The players that we've got are brilliant. So he's certainly playing to our strengths anyway. But I think we do need a busy day tomorrow.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's really interesting. But I mean, I want to come to you, Ben Jones, on this, because I think when Mike Flynn came in at Swindon, I was actually a little bit sceptical, because I wasn't sure that his stylistic approach was kind of compatible with what the clubs wanted, and you kind of questioned the sort of the clarity of the vision a little bit. But do we sometimes not give younger managers enough credit in terms of their ability to maybe learn and embrace different ideas?
Well, as I discussed with you in a previous pod, Flynn just says, I want to play football. It's just I've been restricted in previous clubs I've been with. At Newport, we played football until the pitch got cut up because they played rugby on it. There's only one way that you can really play, and that's to lump it and make yourselves awkward. And because we were playing with players with a budget, you have to work with what you've got, and therefore you just make life hard for the opposition. Again, at Walsall, there was things going on behind the scenes where he couldn't operate the way he wanted to. So again, he worked with what we had, and the best way of playing that way would be a more old-fashioned way of playing. And at Swindon now, he's come into a technically good dressing room that were young and had a bit of soft underbelly. Well, he's added a little bit more steel to the team, and he's added he's just played to their advantage, which is technically brilliant, really attacking. It's great to see. We do look like conceding goals, though, as we did the other day at 5 at Wrexham, and the way we threw a 4-1 lead away at half-time, that should never happen. So, we do need to address some things. It's not like we're just going to take this lead, and I still can't see this being sustainable throughout a whole season, but we'll see where it takes us.
You've got to enjoy it for now. What's your take on things from the outside?
Yeah, I think the attacking football you're saying there, Ben, was something you'd probably actually associate with Swindon anyway. I mean, my impression from the outside looking in is that certainly for the last few seasons, you always seem to score a lot of goals, but concede them as well. Certainly remember a couple of seasons ago, there was quite a few games where you won 3-2, 4-3, those kind of results. So I guess kind of maybe with kind of if Lenny's kind of coming in and adopting the club culture a little bit and maybe just tweaking it here and there. Whereas, as you rightly say, kind of at Newport, you're always working with one of the lowest budgets in the division. And you've got to kind of find a different way. And usually that means you're going to be a bit more direct, especially on their pitch. And you're going to do other things. So I think they were always kind of the sort of side you'd say mastered the dark arts, as it were, all the gamesmanship side of it. So yeah, definitely interesting to see that he's adaptable in that way, though. But like you say, the only thing I would say, if you're scoring goals and you can keep doing that, it maybe won't matter too much if you do start shipping them as well. If you can score 2 goals most games in League Two more often than not, that's going to get you a result. Especially as there's a very key statistic in League Two, which is whoever scores first pretty much nearly always wins. Occasionally there'll be a draw. There's going to be draws, but you don't see many occasions in League Two where teams come from behind to go and win. It's kind of an exception rather than a rule. You might have the odd team here and there that kind of buck that trend, but generally speaking, if you score the first goal in League Two, you're going to get a positive result in the game. So with that kind of attacking approach, especially if it's out of the blocks, I think it's possible that you could go the distance with that. I can't say I was actually expecting it from you. I mean, from pre-season, kind of, Gabe were talking about Swindon. It was kind of, your squad looked a bit of a mess at the time. We didn't really know what we were going to get out of Flynn, and I kind of thought you would be sort of lower half. So yeah, it'd be definitely interesting, and if you can keep all those attacking numbers going. I don't know if we've lost Ben there. He's definitely
we seem to have lost Ben, a little bit. I'm not quite sure, having a bit of a technical issue, but we've got some other guests on the line, so we will say, Ben, I don't know if you can hear this at all, but thanks a lot for joining us, mate, and great to see Swindon starting so well, and good luck for the rest of the season. Our next guest is MK Dons fan, Dan. How are you, mate? Good to see you.
Yeah, no, good to see you too, mate. I'm doing well. It's nice sitting pretty top of the league, even when you're playing absolutely horrendously, isn't it?
At least you're honest. I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? You must feel so conflicted at the moment, because it's like, on the one hand, it's so nice to have that cushion of 12 points from your first 5 games. You've given yourselves an excellent opportunity, and yet we all know that your performance levels have got to improve if you're going to get in the top 7, let alone the top 3. So mixed feelings, I imagine.
For some people, I mean, I'm sure I've said on yours, like, I don't care about style so long as we win. So
sure.
For us, it seems to be more of a case of we do what we need to early to get in front. So I think
interesting.
I I'd imagine we've probably scored the most goals in the first 10, 15 minutes in the league so far.
Do you think it's a case of game stakes then, a little bit, where it's like if you're ahead, obviously the opposition are going to come onto you and maybe the stats are a little bit distorted, possibly?
That definitely seemed the case to me for specifically the Tranmere and the Doncaster games. It's like we got ahead early and we'd done what we needed to do. So if we could keep that clean sheet, then it did seem like, well, we don't really need to try and push and expose ourselves to get the second, to get the third goal. And then, but like with Wrexham, I think it was maybe a bit differently because you knew they would probably come out and they'd probably score like 2 or 3. So yeah, I don't know. It has been such a strange one because like you see all the conversations from like outside the club and even inside the club. It's like this can't be sustainable. But yet, other than the Crawley game, we've somehow managed. We've just somehow managed to find these results, which is what we've desperately needed because they're games that last season we would have lost comfortably.
No, it's a really interesting point. Ben, there was I think it might have been the 15-16 season where Tranmere won their first 4 games under Gary Brabin. And but you could kind of tell that the performances weren't sustainable in the National League. And then did you end up finishing mid-table that season or something like that? So you've kind of got to be a little bit careful, I guess, about getting too carried away sometimes, even if the results are great.
Yeah, although I can kind of see what you're saying about getting the first goal and then maybe game situation changing. I mean, I think with MK Dons in particular, they have quite a small squad and they were looking to make a few additions. They made a couple good signings in the last few days.
I think I would say they've got quite a big squad though, but maybe
of the first team quality, I don't think they had that many.
Certainly
when we played them. But yeah, I think it goes back to something I was saying a minute ago in regards to Swindon, that in League Two, when you get that first goal, it's such a big thing because it's so rare that teams come from behind to win. So if you're getting all those goals first 10, 15 minutes, then there's no reason that can't carry on for the season. And like you say, you had that Wrexham game, which was a bit of a different one. The Wrexham put the ball into the box as quick as they can. So they're putting you under a lot of pressure. So you kind of know that there's a decent chance they're going to find a goal from somewhere, which forced MK Dons to be more proactive. So yeah, I mean, I predicted they'd finish third before the season kicked off, and I've not seen anything to change that just yet, I don't think.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, Dan, I think what's clear to me is that this team is crying out for a real focal point, because as much as Isa and Lecco have produced some wonderful early season form, you definitely need someone who can, especially if you're going to play quite a direct game, long ball game under Graham Alexander, you're going to need someone who can win some aerial duels and bring everyone else into the game.
It's just something that we need, something a bit different. So, like as has already been said, we've got a really, really good starting 11, and maybe even now that people like Conor Grant are coming back from injury, like maybe 13, 14, we've got that are really, really good for this league.
Sure.
Then outside of that, we don't really have too much, and we don't really have much in the way of changing the system too much either. So what we've noticed is we've started most, if not all, games sort of like a 3-5-2 sort of thing with the 3 central midfielders and then Isa and Lecco up top. And then we change, like once we make some substitutions, we change to a 4-3-3, but we don't really have anything outside of that. And even then we're putting, say, Isa onto the left wing or something like that. Whereas with the addition of Jack Payne, and then if we do, say, bring in someone like Luke Armstrong, we can then change it so we've got that physical striker up top that can play on his own, because Isa can't really do that. We've got that sort of the number 10 or something, or like I saw something the other day that Jack Payne can maybe play on one of the wings as well. So then we can actually have sort of like more of a natural winger to
He's not a winger though, Jack Payne.
No, but I saw something that apparently he's had. I don't really know a great deal about it, but apparently he had one of his best spells as it was either like a left winger or a right winger and cutting inside or something like that.
Yeah,
so
he can play wide. Yeah,
so he can basically do the same as Ashley Hunter, but on the other wing, that sort of thing. So it just we need just things that can change it up a little bit, because otherwise we're going to get found out pretty quickly, and you can't sustain a league season with 13 players.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, that's 13 players. Have you got a lot
well,
out injured?
no, it's not injuries, but it's like Sir Dara Burns. We've not seen him. On the first game of the season, he was over in Ireland,
Oh, right,
and
okay.
it's just players sort of like of that ilk that aren't necessarily going to get the minutes, and they're just not. We've not seen enough of them to really feel like we can rely on them to then change a game. So if we have
Although I kind of feel with the Dara Byrne situation, he came in sort of mid-season in Ireland, so he didn't actually have a pre-season. And I would think that given how highly rated he was when he first came down, and the fact he's dropping down a level, I would think from the club's perspective, given that they've already made that investment in Dara Burns, do you want to actually invest some time and sort of try and get him to the level that he was maybe rated before?
You'd hope so, but then we've had all of pre-season, and Graham Alexander's been very, 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 very thorough with his squad, and it's basically anybody that he doesn't see that will fit, or he doesn't see that sort of putting in the work, or anything like that, he's got rid of. Which is why Dan Kemp's at Swindon. Like Dan Kemp didn't fit into the system that we had for the start of the season. So this 3-5-2 sort of situation. He wanted to leave. He didn't want to be here, so just got rid of him, even though he's arguably the best player in the league at the moment. It's one of those, like with Dara Burns especially, we've not really seen anything in games other than, I'd argue, quite early on last season, where we could think if he's on the bench, he can come in and he can really change the game, like for the positive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, what are you hoping for then, Dan, from deadline day for MK?
Well, it sounds like we've got a fullback cover in Joe Tomlinson from Peterborough. That seems to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I like him when he's fit. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be in the process of being announced. Yeah, and then, as was widely reported on yesterday, I think it was, we've put in quite a big and probably too much of a bid for Luke Armstrong, which is probably that physical striker that we desperately need. Because as good as Mo Isa is, he blows over with the wind. He's really not very strong. His game is playing through and have him run onto the ball. Whereas we probably need that other striker beside him that can hold it up and then can play it through to him. So if we get those two, I think that's definitely a very good start. And I think it's been a good window as well.
Do you think you need a dominant centre back?
I mean, we've got Warren O'Hara, who I'm not necessarily sure if you could call him dominant, but he might be up there. We've got Jack Tucker, we've got Dean Lewington's just coming back from injury, and we've got Tommy Smith. So I think centre back wise, we're there or thereabouts. Like maybe one other, but
How's it worked, by the way, Dan, with Tommy Smith on the left of a back three? Because I don't really think of him as a natural outside centre back, because he's quite an old centre half. Has he been caught in one-on-ones, or has Dan Harvey been dropped quite deep a lot? Or
well, I mean, we have given away a fair few chances, which has just come away. But most of the time, I've never really felt like, even if we do give them away, that we're going to concede. So I really rated him at Wrexham, at the Wrexham game. I thought, because we were all a bit surprised that we were starting him rather than, say, going to a back four and then like having more of an attacking threat. But
so Dan, hand on heart then, you're saying that when MK Dons have given away chances, you've not felt nervous about the possibility of conceding. You felt like they're kind of speculative shots or they're sort of half chances, and you're not that nervous.
Caveat: I wasn't at Colchester and I wasn't at the Wycombe game, but other than that, I mean, no, not really. But then I don't know if that's just my blind optimism rather than being sensible about it. But no, like even with Doncaster, I've listened to quite a few podcasts, and people are like, well, there's been a lot of talk at how they probably deserved something from the game, and if you think about how many chances they had, maybe, but watching it from the cowshed, there wasn't too many chances that they had where I was there thinking, oh, that probably should have gone in.
A golden opportunity where they've got to
yeah,
score.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they had one where their striker blazed it closer to the corner flag from about 6 yards out, but other than that, it was mainly like Molineux's goal was excellent, and I think he had another chance just like that. But I don't really remember fearing too much, which is quite something as well, considering McGillivray's probably not had the best start to his Don's career that he could have done.
Yeah, well, I think he's a really good shot stopper. I'm pretty confident that his form's going to come, and hopefully MK Dons will continue. Dan, listen, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, speak to you again soon, mate.
Yep, no, thanks for inviting me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bringing in our next guest, which is Ryan from Up the U's. How are you, Ryan?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, really good to have you on the show. Just talk to us how you're feeling as a Colchester United fan right now. I imagine it's changed a little bit off the back of that 3-0 victory at Gillingham.
Yeah, it was a massive, massive shock. I think any Col U fan that thought they were going to go into this game and get something from it, being a bit sceptical. Also, Gillingham sitting pretty at the top of the league, 4 games, 4 wins, all 1-0. We obviously had a very, very horrible game against MK, losing it very, very late on. So the spirits were high because we had a few players coming back from injury and suspension in Tavide and Fikra Kelleher. But to come away from a game against top of the league 3-0, when for the first hour the Gills looked like they were going to nick the goal, sit back, and then win 1-0 again. And once the first goal went in, the sort of floodgates opened, and for the last 30 minutes, it was a completely different game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a big feeling, among Colchester fans that maybe you're missing a bit of a midfield general this season, and the sort of shift towards youth, which is really to be expected under Ben Garner, has kind of left you short of a bit of experience, a bit of nous in certain areas. Is that something you'd subscribe to?
100%. I think against MK Dons, that is the one thing that we lacked. It was very hard for that game because we started with Joe Taylor and Bradley Ihoven up front. Bradley is an academy graduate. He's 17, 18 years old, just starting to get into the first team. But we didn't have a striker on the bench. Akinde was out injured and Hopper was injured as well. Tavide was on his last game for a suspension. So by the end of the game, both of them had come off the pitch. So we were very, very much needed that sort of leader up the front to keep the guys going. We've got Arthur Reed in centre mid, who is a proven sort of League One, League Two player. He spent a lot of time at Stevenage and was very, very good there. And he does look like a very creative sort of central midfielder. But in that game, 100%, when Gilby went through to make it 2-2, we needed to bring. Obviously, last year we had Cole Scouse. We needed someone like Cole Scouse to come on, calm the boys down, and then. Generally, if we had that, I think we would have come away from the MK game with at least a draw. Maybe the win would have gotten a bit sooner, but I definitely don't think we would have lost.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, how highly do you rate Ben Garner as a coach?
I can't say too much, to be honest, because other than what he did at Swindon, where he played some nice football, I don't know too much about him. I mean, we played Colchester towards the end of last season, I think it was, which is a little bit of a dead rubber. And they were playing, some decent counter-attacking football then. And, they carved us open a few times that game. I probably should have scored a few more than they did, the way that game went. So, it'd be kind of interesting to see how that plays over the course of a season. I haven't researched Colchester as much as some of the other clubs, so I don't know too much about their squad situation. Who's kind of
do you think to give you another question then, Ben, do you think that the trade-off is worthwhile to go for a youth-centred approach where you try and get the best loan deals, which Colchester have tried to do, and maybe develop a few of your own players? Do you think that trade-off is worthwhile in terms of the loss that you get from that, which is maybe losing out on a bit of experience?
I think there's a few clubs in League Two are in that situation where they're kind of trying to strike the balance between developing players, some of their own, some on loan, with a view to signing them after loans, and being competitive. Because what you don't want to do is, end up with a situation where you've got a load of kids, and then if it goes wrong and things go sour, then it's really difficult to kind of turn it around. Like, as Brian was saying just there, they kind of maybe missed that midfield general in that one game in isolation. but kind of over the course of a season, there'll be quite a few games in those kind of molds, especially in League Two. So you always need that experienced spine, I think, in League Two. So like your goalkeeper through your centre back and centre mid. I think you need kind of one of each of those as kind of like your experienced players, just to settle it down, help with the game management, to cling on to draws or hold on to a 1-0 away from home, those kind of things. But there's a day left in the window, and I think from what I've kind of gathered from our end, there's going to be a lot of movement across the league in the next 24 hours, because all the kind of Premier League and Championship clubs have been holding on to their youth players as late as possible, because I think they had a late start to pre-season. So they were still assessing players and trying to work out who maybe could be a fringe player for them, or what league they should end up in on loan. So you might see someone come in on loan in the next couple of days. Sorry, today, tomorrow. Who could change that, because they might, if someone goes out on loan to a Championship club, then they might release someone down into League Two. So I think we'll see a lot of movement in the next 24 hours. And I think the youth policy in general is the way to go, as long as you're not flirting with relegation, because then you've always got the thing where Newport always seem to do this really well, is that if 2 or 3 of those young players have good seasons, it can kind of drag you to the edge of the playoffs. With a bit of a headwind, the momentum goes a long way in this league. And you get to kind of January and you're thinking, we're only a few points away. Let's bring in 1 or 2 more players.
Absolutely. I mean, Ryan, coming to you on this then, does this feel a bit like a building season for Colchester, where you're thinking, try and establish that style that Ben Garner wants, maybe bring through a few of the lads from the academy, because I know you've got quite a good crop at the moment, and then, just give yourself some foundations to then maybe stretch the purse strings for 2 or 3 experienced heads in the summer?
100%. You could see when Ben come in last season after Bloomfield got the call for his dream job, he come in and he was trying to put his style on the players that we had. Also, we had a lot of ex-Ipswich players. Some would say the Ipswich retirement home. But they've all gone, and he's got his formation. He's got the players playing how he wants to play. He's brought in 2 players that he knows really well in Egbo and Ian Darlow. Unfortunately, Ian Darlow is going to be out for quite a while with an injury. But Egbo looks like a really, really strong, versatile player. We've been playing with a back 3 with Nico Lawrence sitting in front, so sort of doing the Liverpool thing of defending with 3 and then attacking with 3, and then Lawrence dropping into the back line and going to a back 4. Again, Lawrence was another one. He's picked up an injury Saturday and is out for a long period of time.
That's a real shame, by the way. So, Ryan, because he's supposed to be really high. I remember when you first got him on loan, he was incredibly highly rated at Torquay, and he seemed to have a great first month as well.
Yeah, he was at like you say, he was at Torquay. I think he signed for Torquay in January. Got a man of the match in his first game, and then was awarded the Player of the Year at the end of the season, but he was only there for half the season. So ex-COU player Frank Newell as well, when he signed, he said that he's a cracking player, a really good lad, you've got a good one there. So it is a real shame to see him be out. Ben Garner in an interview today said, unfortunately, he's going to be out for months, not weeks. So that's going to be a big miss, because I think it was the MK Dons game, he made, I don't know how he cleared the ball, but it got crossed in and he slid on his back, stopped the cross with his right foot and then cleared it with his left whilst laying on the floor. And it was like, he's 19 years old and he looks like a real experienced centre-back already. But I think obviously, like we say, we need that central midfielder. Ben's going to have a look at the players. He knows how they play. He knows what he's going to get from them week in, week out. He's going to look at them first and then have a look around and see what's about that fits his needs.
I'll tell you what then, Ryan, I'll ask you what I asked Ben, which is, how highly do you rate Ben Garner from your first-hand experience?
I like it. It is a completely different style of football to what Colchester's always played. We've always always played a 4-2-3-1. Doesn't matter if we're 4-0 up and we want to just see the game out, or if we need a goal, we will play 4-2-3-1. So it's nice for him to come in and go, not playing that no more. I'm going back to having 2 strikers up front. I want a midfield 4. I want my back 3. So then the style of play that he plays as well, with the high possession, lots of passing, is something that Colchester fans have not seen really in a while. You see it come to the stadium, but we never see it being played at the stadium by us. There are times when it's looked a bit shady. I think about 30 minutes in against the Gills, Lawrence was being pressed, had the ball in our own half, and it was like, just clear it. But it excites me because it is, like I say, it's something that Colchester fans have never seen their team play in that way.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting, Ryan. Hopefully Colchester can make some progress this season, and I'm sure we'll have you on the show again later in the campaign, mate.
Awesome, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers. Well, Ben Nicholls of Swindon Town has stayed on. We seem to have sorted out the technical issues, Ben. So we might as well finish off with you for the last 20 minutes if you're happy to stick with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry about the internet gremlins. I think they're all sorted now. But I don't know what happened there, but a quick switch on and off the of the Wi-Fi, and it seems to be rolling again. So my apologies.
That's done the trick. I did want to go back to asking you a little bit about Jake Young, actually, Ben, because obviously very much the hero of the hour. But the funny thing for me is that he was a bit inconsistent, possibly at previous clubs, Forest Green and Bradford. Maybe wasn't necessarily made the main man at those clubs, but clearly Swindon saw a lot of potential in it. How do you think they've been able to get the best out of him where maybe others haven't?
I think he's very much a confidence player. He's got a good relationship with Charlie Austin. I think the two have clicked as a pair together, as in mates. I think he started off with a bang immediately. He came on a sub at the opening game against Crewe, and he scored within like 90 seconds of being on the pitch. I think that immediately just naturally gave him a big boost. And he's really just taken off since then. He's just been on cloud nine. He's not come off it. Again, we're a team that creates a lot of chances. He again also has he's rooming with Dan Kemp, who is unbelievable at this level. I mean, the bloke's a magician with the ball at his feet. He almost single-handedly kept Hartlepool up last year. And
they're both brilliant ball carriers as well, because I remember watching Jake Young. I think he came off the bench for Forest Green at Bradford a couple of seasons ago, and he scored this incredible solo run where he just beat 2 or 3 players and then stuck it top bins. And then Dan Kemp's one of those who can really carry the ball as well. And just having both those players in the team and the sort of synergy between them, with Charlie Austin's running off the ball as well, that seems like such a lovely combination, doesn't it?
It's really, really good. And we've got players like Hepburn Murphy as well. It's not getting a look in it, and he's a fantastic ball carrier at rapid pace. So we've actually got a little bit of depth there. I think also mainly it's just sometimes just clicked with the football we're playing. And he's a good player. He just needed that little break in the team and that little run of goals, which he's got now. And hopefully it keeps going. Already fearing January and late August.
Enjoy what you've got while you've got it, I guess. We kind of want to move on to sort of a bit of a wider League Two chat, Ben. Who would you say is the best opposition player that you've seen face Swindon?
Opposition team. Well, Wrexham obviously are a team who are blessed with options, talented players. I think they will settle down and they will put on a run together, and I think there or thereabouts they will be towards the top of the league. There's that lad Lee that plays midfield, who's ridiculous at this level. I think he's very good as well. To be honest, other than that, really, we've not really played among the top teams. We've only played 4 games this season because our opening game against Crawley was called off. So, I don't think we've actually been challenged too much I think the Crew game we sort of threw away and was our own doing. And then obviously we have the Wrexham game. Forest Green, I think they looked okay. I think it's been a mid-table team, to be quite honest. Forest Green, I think they've got some quality players, but I think they're quite a few short from really putting in a challenge this season. And then there's the last game against Crawley, who looked very good for 20 minutes. But I think once we broke them down, I think they just look really poor. I think they've overachieved at the start of the season. And the way they just kind of collapsed, really, they just fell over. We scored 5 goals.
Players as well, don't they? So
yeah, well, it's just like I unbelievable. I might take my hats off to Scott Lindsay, someone who I don't really rate too much as a manager, but what he's done there with having to sell basically all his league experienced players and bring in these non-league youth players and to get the start they have and the results that they've had at the start of the season was hugely impressive. But it can't carry on. And again, they've told another one for us, they let go of Telford. And again, that's a lot of goals.
Yeah, even with the start, most people are still going to have them down to go down.
Yeah. I think, and they looked like a team with a really soft underbelly. Once you broke through them, they just sort of fell apart really. And defensively, they were all over the place. So I tip them to they're going. I can see them going on long perilous runs without a win. They do have some quality there. You've got Ben Gladwin to come back into the side. You've got Dean Conroy to come back into the side. 2 players that we do know very well, and they will add to it. And Scott Lindsay does play attractive football, and they will upset a couple of teams along the road. But will it be enough? I don't know.
We'll receive that. But Ben Jones, from what Ben was saying there, there's maybe question marks over possibly the quality of the league or whether Swindon haven't necessarily played a top side yet. What's your experience been as a Tranmere fan?
Well, we've had a pretty rough start to the season, really. I mean, if you looked at where everyone was predicted to finish on average, we've played generally teams predicted to finish top 7. So I think we've had a decent oversight. We've played Barrow, who you predicted to be right up there. We've had MK Dons, Salford, Notts County. So we've played a good mix of them. I think I said to Gabe that I was actually most impressed with Salford. They're historically, as in recent seasons, last 2 seasons or whatever it is, a side that we've generally beaten quite comfortably. I think we've got quite a few sort of 2-0 wins over them the last few years, when we haven't necessarily been that strong ourselves. But this year they just seem to have something different about them, and we were 2-1 up at half time, and although we had 2 players go off injured, they just came out with like a bit more aggression and hunger than maybe we'd seen from them the past couple of years. So I think of the sides I've seen so far, I think Salford are the ones who surprised me the most in terms of what I thought they would be pre-season to what I've actually seen. Notts County were pretty much exactly what I expected. They dominated the ball, albeit against a very makeshift Tranmere side with no fullbacks. We had a centre-back and a centre-mid at fullback, so they had a lot of joy kind of in between those spaces there. And it kind of meant that we couldn't really press them, because when we pressed them, it left those fullbacks exposed. So I don't think that was a great game to assess how good Notts County were. The only thing I kind of wondered about them, which we saw for short periods here and there in that game, and was kind of part of the reason we nearly actually got a draw out of that game, which would have been wildly undeserved. The team's very slow. Probably the slowest in the league, I would say. And when we put them under pressure the last 20 minutes, I don't think they were actually coping with it, if I'm honest.
They're quite an aged team, aren't they? They're not young.
Yeah,
they've got quite an elderly...
Yeah. What's he, like 32, 33?
Who's that?
Yeah.
John Bostock?
John Bostock. Well, I remember at Swindon in 2000, under Paolo in 2011. He was playing for Swindon, and he wasn't brand new then, because obviously he had Tottenham and he'd played off other clubs before that. So he's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I think the thing most of our fans thought going into that game was, first of all, we kind of made a mistake. We left our biggest goal threat, Josh Hulks, on the bench. He comes on 25 minutes to go, scores not long later. But yeah, I think they're very slow, and if and when they come up against sides who can turn them around, basically. So as Wrexham did last year, those kind of sides, who can get it from back to front quickly. I'm thinking Bradford, even with Andy Cook up top. I'm thinking Doncaster of last season, but I don't quite know what they look like this year. Certainly MK Dons, Grimsby. They get the ball forward very quickly. Some of these sides, be interested to see how Notts hold up against them. They'll still dominate the ball in most games, I would imagine. I can't see anyone, or certainly very rarely anyone, passing them off the pitch. Maybe someone like Salford or something, away at Salford. But other than that, they'll dominate the ball. But what they may find is that they just struggle with handling the direct teams. So be interested to see how that plays out. I mean, either way, they're going to finish top 7. It's just, do they have quite the right to get that top 3 spot?
I think they win the league personally. We're hoping to get Tom Williams on next week for a proper debate on this. We've had late.
Well, I think from what I've seen so far, and kind of looking at other games and some of the underlying stats, as I say, I really rate Salford. And then the kind of the numbers from Mansfield are very impressive as well.
Mansfield looked really strong. I thought they'd underachieved this season, but I've actually been really impressed. I feel like I'm not sure Accrington Stanley have the quality to sustain it.
They'll be mid-table, I think, when it settles.
But listen, great start to them. Well done, because I was actually before.
A few people had them possibly flirting with relegation, so they're another club that always seems to overachieve with resources.
I think with Accrington Stanley, Newport, and maybe Wimbledon, I think there's probably the question mark over whether they can sustain what they've done. I mean, I'd be really interested to get your either of your takes really on, I suppose, some of the sides, like, for example, Wimbledon. They've obviously started really well. They seem to have recruited well, and they've actually loaned in Lewis for a centre-back from Stockport County. And Stockport are actually short of a centre-back or two now, and Lewis is one of the best in the league. So it's funny how these things sometimes work out, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I tagged Wimbledon at the pre-season to have a bit of a struggle this season. I think hats off to them, actually, because last year we had a soft underling. We absolutely hammered them towards the back end last season, 5-1 away from home. I think they have recruited well. There's that midfield player who I can't place the name they got from Stevenage, was a very shrewd buy. Jake Reeves, that's the fella. Very, very, very shrewd buy. That was a very good purchase from there. And it's caught by going, they might not actually be as bad as I think they are. So I think he's added a bit of steel to the midfield as well. And they had some good players anyway. It's just they looked a bit soft. And I think they've added a bit still. I don't know what their strength and depth is. I don't know if they can keep it up. But, I was the ones that aforementioned beforehand with the Newports and Accringtons. I think maybe they stand a better stead than the others. But I know I've been slowly quite impressed, because they look a tough cookie like they did last night in the league in the League Cup. I think they may be just a tougher nut to crack this season, and good for them.
I think most of the League Two sides, apart from Harrogate, put on some decent displays in the League Cup.
Because Doncaster put in a great effort against.
Yeah, brilliant last night. Yeah. We've got them on the weekend, so I was quite pleased that they were pushed all the way.
Interesting. I was just kind of looking at who I predicted as the top 7 before the season got going, and the only one who I kind of have doubts over now would be Doncaster, who obviously are propping the league up at the moment. I mean, they undoubtedly going to improve because they've got
they've got some good players.
Yeah, but whether they're going to improve enough to get as high as I thought they would get, because I predicted them 4th.
Well, they're already 8 points off the playoffs, aren't they? So that
I mean, that can turn around in 4 or 5 games, can't it? But if you win 5 games on the bounce like you can in this.
But I guess you are playing catch up
Yeah.
even in September, which I suppose isn't ideal. And
Yeah.
I suppose what the interesting thing is, there's lots of people who had Stockport and Wrexham in their top 3. They're languishing in 19th and 16th. And actually, county boss Dave Challoner is heavily linked with the Charlton job. So coming to you on this, Ben, I think I'm right in saying Paolo Di Canio left for Sunderland in the middle of a was it the title winning season that he left, or
no, it was the following season in League One. We actually played Tranmere the Tuesday after he left. We went top the league, so we were it was just the beginning of February. I think the owner had taken his withdraw his funding, and sold Matt Ritchie just to keep the club alive. The club sold Matt Ritchie for under his feet, which angered him, so he inevitably walked, and the club were in a bit of a financial tightrope from now to the end of the season, and beyond, actually, to be fair, looking back. But yeah, no, it was the following season in League One, but it was during, we were a top 2 contender, and losing him did affect the club badly, and losing Matt Ritchie, who was quality back then.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, Ben Jones, do you think that could have an impact on Stockport, or do you actually think that maybe a more progressive manager that likes the ball on the deck might end up suiting this squad better?
Possibly. I mean, I think in the end last season, when it came into the run-in, they dropped some points in games they shouldn't have, where they were a bit negative. So I watched a midweek game where they drew 0-0 with Gillingham, and they were passing the ball really slowly, and the centre backs were the ones who were kind of seeing most of the ball, and it was going across the back 3, and it was just really comfortable for Gillingham in that game. And maybe they had a few draws or 1-0 losses towards the end of last season, which they shouldn't have had. But you look at that squad, and surely it'll improve with or without Challoner. Whether it'd improve if they did get someone progressive, it's hard to say, because when you get a new manager, it can go either way, can't it? You can get the new manager bounce, or you can try and change too much, and they can actually disrupt things. And
I think with Stockport, I feel like they've got to play on the deck like you described, because they don't have Carl Wootton, who's their target man, and I think that's right. We've got to play along, but I don't really think that's how Challoner works at his best, or how his teams play best. And Carl Wootton's not back until October, so actually, you know what? I sort of feel like it might end up working in their favour if Challoner were to leave, if they're not going to bring in another.
If you look at, I think I'm right in saying that he got promoted with Hartlepool with Luke Armstrong, who's now at Hartlepool. I mean, I said right towards the back half of last season that I thought he should have been their number 1 target coming into this year.
I agree. I think that would have made so much sense, because Luke Armstrong can do what Carl Wootton does, but he's got more of a goal threat as well.
Yeah, he's got more of a goal threat, but then they went and kind of put all their eggs in the Nick Powell basket, and from what I gathered, it's not really worked very well for them so far.
But again, I think a new manager who's maybe more progressive and better, at sort of coaching a different style of football might actually get more out of Nick Powell.
I think with the foundations they have there with the defence, because it's a very, very strong defence. I mean, probably the best in the league defence, isn't it? But if they went and played, I don't know, the same brands that Swindon are playing, with that strong back line already in place, I think that could suit them. So it'd be interesting if Challoner did take that job, who they would bring in. Would it be someone with that approach who would be a bit more aggressive, or are they going to take someone who's more pragmatic, and kind of, because I think in League Two, all the experienced managers tend to be that pragmatic approach, where they just kind of like to grind results out. They're happy to win a game 1 or 2-0, and play a certain way. You usually have to go for someone who's a bit younger, and therefore a bit more of a gamble to get the progressive football. Interesting for them.
Absolutely, yeah. Ben Nicholls, I want to ask you what your top 3 is for this season, and has it changed from the start of the season?
I'm going to say Yeah, no, I think it's too early to really change your mind. It's only a few games in, and obviously at the start of the season, results are all over the place, and the transfer window's not even closed yet. So I'm still going to say I had Notts County as winners. I think that can still happen. I think they've had a few changes, and I think they can settle down. I think Wrexham will have a good January. I think they'll, as I say, that they're planning to spend about £250,000 on a striker from Wickham, and I think they'll have more players in January just to bolster them. I think at the moment they're in a false position. The third place, that's up for grabs. That is up for grabs. At the time, I said Stockport would do it. So that's probably my only doubt of my pre-season fixtures. Now that could be anyone. I'm dying to say Swindon, but I'm still going to hold back on that. I'll come back to you on January with that.
You must be more confident now in Swindon before, because remember when we did that summer deep dive, you kind of had to talk me into some optimism for Swindon.
Yeah, well, I was because we had some good players. It's just we had a really tough underbelly, and at that time I thought we'd need a few additions and strengthening. We'd look right, but then it took so long to do anything in the transfer window. I started to worry about the budget, what the finances there, what was going on, why were Doncaster, who I tipped to do quite well, and I still think will do quite well eventually. I don't know if it's McCann or if it's momentum or whatever. But we're doing quite so well and doing lots of business, and we still weren't doing it. And Flynn was just coming up the same things of going, I will not put this club in a financial situation where we overspend and the market's incredibly inflated. When it's settled, then we'll be busy. And he's waited to like 3 weeks before the season, and we signed like 6 or 7 players in a period of 2 weeks. And it's all come together quite well, quite nicely. Sometimes that's built through good dressing rooms, which there is a really good dressing room. But when you're attacking football and you're scoring goals and things are going great, everyone's in a good mood. But yeah, tight dressing room. I think we've got a really good manager. I think for this level, he's exceeded expectations tactically and what he can do. And I think it was issues that were above his head why he struggled so much at Walsall. And I think now he's just been allowed to do how he wants to do. And I think he's just showing what he can be. And there's a touch of Richie Wellens about him, which a lot of people have pointed out, on the way his mannerisms, the way he talks, the way he plays. It's very high press. It's very attacking. And it's, again, half of football's momentum. If you've got that going and you keep going and you've got a good dressing room, then you've got half a chance. I still think we need to add a couple more defensive units. I think the squad does need to be a little bit bigger if we are going to be serious challengers. But at the moment, things are going nicely. I'm not going to predict. I'm going to say Swindon will be in and around top 7, but I'm not going to blow my trumpet yet and say we're top 3 yet, because I don't think we are.
No, well, never underestimate Michael Flynn. I think that's the one.
Well, no, absolutely not, And I think we've just fallen across a fantastic mix, a fantastic blend of players, and it's only 4 games. Stop getting so excited, but it's really great watching it. I'm enjoying my football, and that's at this time of the season. Long as you're enjoying it and you're going to games with a smile on your face, it's brilliant. Which create chances of scoring goals. What more can you ask?
Certainly. Well, listen, Ben, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Love your stuff on Fools Rush In podcast. So thanks for joining us. Thanks as always to Tranmere Rovers fan Ben Jones, our co-host for the evening. Thanks to all our guests as well, and to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the League 2 podcast, and we'll see you again very soon.